All right, it's time for our weekly feature, Going Green, and the Worldwide Fund for Nature, the WWF, has urged South African consumers to make it a waste-free festive season. Its mantra is to refuse, reduce and reuse, then recycle. This involves taking reusable products, for example, back to shops, cutting down on packaging and recycling as much as possible. To discuss, we're joined by the project manager of the circular plastics economy at WWF South Africa, Lorren de Kock. She joins us via Skype. Lorren, thank you very much. So take us through this mantra, starting with the first three, refuse, reduce and reuse.
Hello, Francis. Thank you. So the first thing is, consumers are faced every day with packaged goods, with Black Friday coming up, and we have this overconsumption mindset coming up in the festive season, and it's very important just to rethink this and think why do we need all this, and can we reduce our consumption, because with increasing consumption comes extra waste generation, which is just not sustainable going forward. And I mean, if you visit landfill sites, if you visit waste facilities, you can actually see the increasing waste generation from our overconsumption. And with urbanization and people earning a lot more than what they did a few years ago, we are just consuming and buying more, and one can see that the waste generation it's a causal link between what we are consuming.
So is this all about plastics? I mean, the big problem or the big focus, single-use plastics. So you go to the store, you don't take a bag, you take many plastic bags home. It sounds like you're saying don't even walk in the door with all that stuff.
So yes, plastics is one of it. But we consume a lot more. I mean, we consume packaging, and that includes glass, paper, food. I mean, even consuming food and food wastage has a massive impact on the environment. So, I mean, when it comes to plastic bags and the reduce and reuse mantra, for one example, when going to the shops, take your reusable bags with, instead of buying a plastic carrier bag or a paper carrier bag every time you go shop. So it's definitely a behavior shift and a mindset shift that we're trying to instill in users to stop this overconsumption, which is just unsustainable.
Does Black Friday alarm you? All those goods are going to crisscross South Africa in packages and then boxes to be transported as well?
Yes, it is alarming, but we must realize that, for many organizations, it's the bottom line that counts, and they're trying to increase their sales before Christmas, and I'm sure that over the Christmas period, sales will increase as well. And it is concerning that a lot of these goods, either ordered online or bought directly from shops, are packaged. And many of these goods are only single-use goods. So even the crackers that we buy for Christmas, for example, or the Christmas decorations, they are only used once, and unfortunately, they're just thrown away. Even the wrapping paper, which is concerning. So if you look at these waste management facilities, I mean, just the volume of waste coming at them during these periods, I mean, more than doubles, which is very concerning.
So with that, let's just take a quick look at how retailers are doing. I mean, there are now straws, paper straws, glass straws. If you go into some of the coffee shops, for example, some retailers are charging more for the plastic bags. How do you think the industry is doing at sort of transforming at the moment?
I think the awareness that has been raised in the last 2 years has really put the spotlight on every sector in the plastics value chain, which is very encouraging. I mean, if you look at 5 years ago, no one was really worrying about plastic or material use at all, or even waste in general. And I know straws have been the focus for the last year or two due to that video of that turtle that went viral on social media. But it isn't just about straws. It's about everything else that we do consume, and I really think that industry and government are aware of this, and there are a lot of initiatives taking place in this area to address these. If you look at the retailers, yes, they are looking at different packaging or different delivery mechanisms. We also are rolling out an on-pack recycling labeling to make consumers more aware of what they're buying and what can be recycled and not recycled. So we definitely are seeing the industry wanting to be part of solutions going forward.
So let's look at recycling now, and this is happening in some parts of South Africa very concertedly, not in other parts. What would you say to South Africans who are thinking, okay, this is a good message, where do we start this festive season?
So recycling is important, but as our mantra, it's reduce, rethink, reuse, and then lastly recycle. The thing is, consumers are bombarded every day with very decorative packaging, with wrapping paper, especially this time of year. And I think from a consumer perspective, we need to look at, the packaging that we're buying or the goods that we're buying. Can it be kept in this circular economy, or are we just going according to this whole linear mindset of manufacturing, using, and just throwing away? And I mean, the recycling industry is well established in this country. And if you are faced with a product or a packaging that can be recycled, I would generally encourage you to purchase that product and make sure that it is recycled. And that's where the on-pack recycling labeling on packaging comes into play, to inform the consumer, because up until now, consumers don't know, where to take their waste or their plastic or any material to be recycled, or any of their products. So I think that's very important to know, where to take your goods and also what to buy going forward.
So you're saying you can get that information from a label, which would be great. Is that happening at all, or is that something you're just starting to call for now?
Well, WWF facilitated a discussion with the 6 big retailers earlier this year, and on the on-pack recycling labels. And it was agreed to, and there's been a collective standard that's been developed. The 6 big retailers did that and agreed to start implementing these on-pack recycling labels on their new product lines going forward, which definitely informs the consumer what to do with their packaging once they are finished with it. And it's a binary label, and I think Woolworths has been using it for quite a while, but consumers will start seeing it going forward when on their packaging.
Let's just be clear, what can and can't be recycled?
It's very nuanced, and the plastics is very complex. It's a systemic challenge, that we sitting with. It's not just let's just replace plastics with an alternative material. I mean, that's not the case whatsoever. So if you look at in the South African case, if I have to get into the details, I mean, for example, PET beverage bottles are recycled. So that's those Coca-Cola or the soda bottles. If you look at milk bottles, they're recycled. So a lot of the rigid packaging is recycled, but if you look at the flexibles, which is, for example, the chip packets or the pouches that you buy, that is currently not recycled. But it doesn't just go about the technology and the infrastructure that's in place to recycle these items. It also goes about, are they collected? Are they collected by the formal or the informal waste sector? So it doesn't just go about, for example, a straw, which is made of a material that can be recycled, but in practice, it isn't recycled in South Africa currently due to various reasons.
Well, let's talk about those, because there are depots, and obviously some areas have more than others, but sometimes you see informally, you were talking about it, those men sort of on the streets collecting plastic, putting them in huge containers, presumably for recycling. I mean, by recycling properly, could we almost disrupt a little economy that is helping a lot of poor people?
Not at all. I mean, I think if if brand owners and retailers could design their packaging and send those instructions through to manufacturers to be recyclable and recycled in practice, then the informal waste pickers or waste collectors could pick up more packaging that actually is recycled and go back into the system. And, if you look at the kind of plastics that is recycled, if it is recycled, it has a higher value in the system. For example, PET beverage bottles. A chip packet doesn't have any or very little value. You have to pick up almost 900 chip packets to the equivalent of around 40 PET beverage bottles to get approximately 2 Rand currently. So the economics also has to be brought into the discussion.
All right. Finally, let's end with this. WWF initiating the South African Plastics Pact that will be launched next year. Tell me quickly about that.
Okay, so it's a voluntary agreement, and WWF has initiated, together with supporting partners, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, RAP Global, who were instrumental in launching and implementing the UK Plastics Pact, as well as the South African Plastic Recyclers Organisation. And it's a voluntary initiative with time-bound targets that organisations sign up to achieve by 2025. And just shortly, the targets is about reducing problematic and unnecessary plastic packaging. We're also looking at making all plastic packaging reusable or recyclable. Also upping the input recycling rate in South Africa. The input recycling rate at the moment is around 45%. We're looking at raising that to 70% by 2025. And the last target, which is actually one of the most important target, is a minimum 30% post-consumer recycled content in plastic packaging by 2025, which will really drive the circular economy and create a demand or a pull for recycled material in the system.
All right. Thank you very much for that comprehensive look at recycling, where we are a bit confusing because some plastics can be recycled, some cannot. But look out for those labels. It should become more and more informative as we go along. There was the manager of circular plastics at WWF South Africa, Lorren de Kock.